When did the director Luc Besson start writing the story for The Fifth Element? Who did Gary Oldman use as inspiration for his portrayal of the villain Zorg? Who developed the divine language that Lilo speaks in the film? Was it real or just gobbledygook? These questions and more are answered on this episode of
Bat Look Cinema, the podcast.
Life, which you so nobly serves, comes from destruction, disorder, and chaos. Now take this empty glass. Here it is, peaceful, serene, boring. But if it is destroyed, look at all these little things, so busy now. Notice how each one is useful. A lovely ballet ensues, so full of form and color. Now think about all those people that created them. Technicians, engineers, hundreds of people who will be able to feed their children eyes so those children can grow up big and strong and have little teeny-weeny children of their own, and so on and so forth. Thus, adding to the great chain of life. You see, Father, by creating a little destruction, I am in fact encouraging life. In reality, you and I are in the same business. Hello, my name is Zoe. It's spelled Z-O or Z-O if you're outside of the U.S. Welcome back, friends. This is the 192nd episode of Backlook Cinema, the podcast, where we take a look back at the movies of yesteryear, especially the movies of the latter half of the last millennium. If you like what you're about to hear, then please tell your family, tell your friends, and tell that supreme being, which is the key element, who can bring about the light of creation and destroy an ancient evil. Tell them about Backlook Cinema. Now, I remember catching this movie in theaters, and I watched it multiple times over the years. It's a great movie to watch when you got friends over, or you just let it play whenever it happens to come on TV. The most impactful thing about this movie are the highly unusual casting choices, which I'll get into. The other thing that hits you about this movie is the visual language. Everything from the colors, the costumes, the weapons, the equipment, the villains, the vehicles, the buildings, the interiors, basically everything on the screen is loud, bright, and outlandish. The director, Luc Besson, was inspired by the French comic books that he grew up with, and the style of the movie was heavily influenced by French artists Jean Mobius Girard and Jean-Claude Miseres. I actually don't know how to pronounce his last name. Anyways, the production designer Dan Wheel helped to create the future that Besson had been dreaming of since high school, and Jean-Paul Gaultier was responsible for the incredible costume design. So let's talk more about this movie in the opening credits of The Fifth Element. $22.14 is not a good year for Corbin Dallas. His wife left him. His lawyer left him to be with his ex-wife. And he has a number of moving violations on his driving record that threatens his job as a cab driver. When he believes that his life couldn't get any worse, a vision of supreme female beauty and perfection literally falls through the roof of his cab. Accompanying this beautiful young woman that fell into his life are a seemingly non-stop series of chaos and adventures that will lead him and a mismatched band of misfits with $22.14 is not a good year for Corbin Dallas. His wife left him. His lawyer left him to be with his ex-wife. and he has a number of moving violations on his driving record that threatens his job as a cab driver. When he believes that his life couldn't get any worse, a vision of supreme female beauty and perfection literally falls through the roof of his cab. Accompanying the beautiful young woman that fell into his life are a seemingly non-stop series of chaos and adventures that will lead him and a mismatched band of misfits on a mission with the goal of assisting the perfect supreme being in her mission to destroy the ultimate evil that threatens Earth. This movie was released May 9th, 1997, produced by Gaumont and Pinewood Studios. It grossed over $63 million in the US and Canada and over $263 million worldwide on a reported budget of $90 million. And that is incredible. If you adjust it for today's dollars, then that means that the film would have been, well, it would have grossed over $126 million in US and Canada and over $529 million worldwide. And the budget would have been $181 million. That was one of the most expensive films produced in Europe at that time. Well, $90 million was. $90 million is very expensive. It was rare for a film to be that expensive. I remember around that time, Waterworld was being produced, and it had a production of around $100 million. And I remember there were news reports talking about what a gigantic budget Waterworld was and how everybody was not really predicting that it failed, but hoping that it failed because they felt like the producers were spending their money. Right? It was like, how dare you spend that much money on a movie? But in the case of The Fifth Element, it was a massive success. It surprisingly had no sequels, but the success of the movie is unchallenged, at least not in the minds of most of the people who have seen it. This movie stars Bruce Willis as Corbin Dallas. You may have seen him in 12 Monkeys or heard his voice in Beavis and Butthead Do America. He's also been in Striking Distance, The Player, and Hudson Hawk, which is perceived by a lot of people to be a masterpiece. Although I haven't seen it, so I can't judge. His co-star, the female lead, Milla Jovovich. She plays Lilumana Lekatariba Lamina Techa Ekba Desabat, or simply as Lilu. In the divine language that she speaks during most of the film, her name can be translated as Precious Stone of the Earth, Defender of Light and Life, the Honorable. You may have also seen Miss Jovovich on Resident Evil from 2002, The Fourth Kind, Monster Hunter, or Hellboy 2019. Up next is Gary Oldman. He plays Jean-Baptiste Emmanuel Zorg, and he's been in many prestigious films, including Tinker, Tailor, Soldier, Spy, one of my favorite films, The Book of Eli, one of the best superhero movies ever, The Dark Knight, and the critically acclaimed Dracula. I think the movie's called Bram Stoker's Dracula. Up next is Ian Holm. He plays Father Vito Cornelius, and you may have seen him in The Lord of the Rings, The Fellowship of the Ring, a much highly praised film called Brazil. Or you might remember him from Alien. I covered that movie on episode 121, featuring Scott and Frankie from Shoot the Flick. The comic relief was Chris Tucker. He plays Ruby Red, and you may have seen him in Rush Hour. I covered that episode in episode 173. More recently, he's been in Silver Linings Playbook and Air. Brian James plays General Monroe. Now, this is where we get into the unusual casting. Like, the names I've read so far are like Bruce Willis. Yes, you would expect him to be the action hero. Milla Jovovich. Yes, of course she would be the female lead. Of course she would be the heroine, the superhuman being. Gary Oldman, of course he's going to be the villain in I Am Home. Yes, he can be a priest. It's easy fit. Chris Tucker, easy fit to be the comic relief. But then you got Brian James, he plays General Monroe, and this is where the casting gets a little bit goofy, which I found fascinating. And it works because Brian James is an actor, of course. He doesn't often play a distinguished, like, military type. That's not what you picture him as. Usually when you see him, he's like an inmate or a biker or some kind of roughneck. Like he's usually plays that. That is a type of character that James plays. But in this, he's playing the general. He's played general before, but you don't usually picture him playing like such a prestigious type role. But he was, to be fair, he was kind of a goofy general. You may have seen him in Blade Runner, Another 48 Hours, or Tango and Cash. Another incredible casting choice, Tommy Tiny Lister. Oh, I'm sorry, I said his name wrong. Tommy Tiny Lister Jr. plays President Lindbergh. And you may have seen him in Jackie Brown or No Weapon Formed Against Us. Now, what's similar about the roles he played in this movie and in No Weapon Formed Against Us is that in that movie, he's actually playing a preacher or a priest or something like that. At least that's what it seems like he's doing from the box art that I saw. But he's usually playing the same type of roles as Brian James plays, a roughneck, a criminal, a biker, a thug, a gangster. He's usually playing those roles. He's hardly ever playing something as prestigious as President of the United States. And he made it work because he's an actor. It's like he looks weird. It's like no matter how distinguished he acts, no matter how conservative his movements, we basically see him. Well, at least I am seeing him for the first time in a role like this. It's not something that you would expect. Usually you would expect an old white guy that you've seen 1,000 times play the president or a president type person. But Tommy Lister is given a chance to play president, and he does a fantastic job. He made me believe that he could be president. And then, but I think those are basically the two, right? The two unusual casting choices. And then up next is Charlie Creed Miles. He plays David. You may have seen him in Harry Brown or King Arthur. And lastly, I have the musical sensation known as Tricky. He plays a character called Right Arm. And as far as I can determine, this is his only credited role. The only other role that I've seen him in a theatrical capacity is an uncredited role in Ghost in the Shell from 2017. As I stated earlier, this movie was directed by Luc Besson, and he has directed a number of movies. Some of them are, like most of his movies are really impactful, and I've seen a number of his movies. So like one of the movies that he's done is Dracula, A Love Tale. I haven't seen that one. He also did Dogman. I haven't seen that one. These are very recent movies. He did Lucy, which I did see, and that was a very interesting movie to look at. The Lady I haven't seen or heard of. The Messenger, the story of Joan of Arc, I have seen that one, and that was fascinating. And then I think one of the movies that he's most famous for, Leon, the Professional. This movie was also written by Luc Besson with his often writing partner, Robert Mark Kamen. Now, Besson has written many films by himself. For example, Dracula, A Love Tale, and Dogman. He likes to direct. Well, he likes to write movies for himself to direct. That's normally what happens. But oftentimes he'll get together with Kamen and they'll write projects together. For example, they teamed up to write Taken, The Transporter, Colombiana, and Banditas. And I think that at least I'm not familiar with Banditas, but from this list, you can see they're really into like almost fantasy action. I like these movies are fantasy action movies, like action that is so out there. It's like it's not even grounded in reality. So the music was composed by Eric Serra, and you may have heard his music in The Wages of Fear, Dogman, Anna, American Renegades, Lucy, and the music in this film was really nice. It's really gets it's like this movie. The music was made specifically for this film. Does that make any sense when I say that? It's like you really feel like this movie and this film, or the music and this film, go together perfectly. It's like they're so evenly matched. There was a special performance by Eva Mula, and she was the voice for, she was the musician who sang the aria of Lucia de Lammermoor. It's Act 3, Scene 1. It's one of the most difficult arias to perform. And she also she also did the diva dance. She wasn't the woman in the costume. She was the woman who did the music, who actually sang the music for that performance. And that's all I have for the opening credits. And the only announcement I have right now is that I have a couple of new designs on backlookcinema.com/shop. Mainly, I have a sticker sheet. It's a sheet of stickers. It's got Felix the cat. It's got the logo of the show on there. It's, a nice little sticker sheet that you can get. And then some other designs that have been updated. So go check out some of the updates at the shop. And that's it for the opening credits. Let's check out our favorite parts. So in rustling up the themes of the movie, the theme of the movie is it's a very simple movie of ultimate good fighting ultimate evil, the ultimate supreme being versus a dark evil that can't be stopped. The ultimate being was created specifically to stop the ultimate evil. And near the end of the film, she's having doubts as to whether humans are even worth saving, because, she's absorbing human culture during the entire film. And near the end of the film, she goes through a lot of trial and tribulations, and she is witnessing, I think through television mostly, all of the hurt and damage that people do to each other. And, she's asking if, people are really worth saving. And that is a question that this movie is exploring, if people are worth saving. Although I have to admit, it's kind of like slivered in there. Like it's not really important until the very end of the film. So she has to be convinced by Corbin Dallas. It's like, why should she even save humanity? Corbin is basically has to convince her that there is hope and there's love in the world. There are good things in the world. But she doesn't understand love. Is like she she doesn't know love. She doesn't recognize it. So it's like it doesn't really have any meaning for her. So then Corbin confesses that he loves her. And because he has confessed his love for her, then she becomes the weapon that she is meant to be, and she vanquishes evil. So I think the theme is of this movie is surrounded by hope and love, because those are the things that are worth fighting for. It's almost like when Corbin is challenged with why humanity is worth saving, he's kind of struggling with a reason to save humanity, because she's listing all of the things that people do to each other, all of the killing and destruction that people do, the genocides, the chaos, the rape and pillaging, all of the things that people do to each other. She's struggling for a reason as to why few people are worth saving. And then Corbin is also struggling with that question. And I think it's a question that we all should be asking ourselves. It's like, if there is an ultimate evil out there that is intent on wiping out all the people on this planet, are we even worth saving? Is there a point to it all? Can we find a way to love each other before it's too late? All right, so let's get into just some of the things that we really liked about this movie. Honestly, there are far too many things that I enjoyed about this movie. I could not possibly list them all. If I were to start talking about the movie and the things I like about it, I would just be narrating the movie. I'd just be talking about the entire movie. We'd be here for 4 or 5 hours, and I'd be going over every detail of the things about this movie that I found fascinating. So I really didn't take that many notes as I watched the movie. It was like kind of hard to take notes because I was really into watching the movie. When I watch the movie, it's always good. It's good. It was good the last time that I watched it. It's good that I watching it this time. So it was hard for me to distill down to like the best parts, the funniest elements of the fifth element. But what I broke it down to is like the costumes, the creature design, setting, some of the actors, like all of the visual language that it used, all of that I talked about in a top of the episode. Those are the things that I like. My favorite parts about the movie, just visually how it looks is fascinating. It's somebody, the people who made this movie had a vision, right? And they plastered that vision on the screen. It's the closest thing to a comic book movie without actually being based on an actual comic book. And I recognize some of the design language from like the artist Morbius. So it's like Mobius. I think that's how you say his name. But anyways, yeah, I like that. It was the designs of the guns were goofy, and because they were goofy, that made me like them more. Like in one of the scenes, there's a guy trying to rob Corbin, and he aims a gun at him, and the barrel of the gun has like, looks kind of like a mace, like it's got spikes on the end of the barrel. It doesn't feel like that would be useful in a gun, but you know, it's just funny. And then the other thing about a lot of the guns in the movie is that they have these giant like plastic target reticles that like pop up when you're ready to fire the gun, and it just makes it's like a campiness that I can't get over, that is enthralling, I think. So there's not like one particular costume that I'll point to and say, yeah, that costume was great. Like all of the costumes were incredible. So you had like the Blue Divas costume, the woman who sang at the opera song, and that was just her design, like her alien design, and the simple like blue skin tight. I guess it's some kind of dress that she wore. It was a dress that was so tight that as she walked, you could tell it was like difficult to even walk in. Ruby Rhodes costumes. All of his costumes were incredible. It's like, obviously it's made to look like a dress made for a man or something like that. I guess that's the look they were going for. It's like both complex and simple. I saw an interview with Chris Tucker talking about how tight, incredibly tight that costume was and very uncomfortable to wear. Nobody liked the costumes in this movie. I saw an interview with Gary Oldman saying that he hated his costume because it's like a lot of rubber, and it's like rubber is not a comfortable material to wear. And like he said, Bruce Willis had a costume with like this orange, like an orange vest, and he said Willis hated that costume. So the costumes looked wonderful, but they were not wonderful to wear. And the creature designs, the set designs, just because I'm a visual type of guy, I like for stuff to look good, and everything in this movie looked really good. So that would be one of my favorite things about the movie, just the look of it. My next favorite thing is Jean-Baptiste Emmanuel Zorg. He is, as played by Gary Oldman, absolutely incredible. It's just, he's just fun to look at. He's really not on screen all that often, but like my favorite scenes were with him were when he had the meeting with the priest, and that was the scene that I was reenacting at the top of the episode, and how he talked and his cadence. I tried my best to try to imitate his cadence, but I didn't quite get it. But just his manner of speaking was just fun to me. And then he did a demonstration of the ZF-1. That's it is the marquee weapon for Zorg Industries. And when he did the demonstration for it, that was another great scene. I think that when people remember parts of this movie, that's one of the best scenes of the movie. That's the scene that people would remember, him demonstrating that weapon. I also loved, another one of my favorite things about this movie was Ruby Rhod. Ruby Rhod in this movie was just, it's like Chris Tucker outdid himself. It's like, how do you take Chris Tucker, like, especially the way he played, because I feel like he's just playing a version of himself, but it's just like an amped up version of himself. Because I've seen his stand up, and his stand up is exactly what you see when you look at like a Chris Tucker movie, especially his early movie, especially like anything from Friday to Rush Hour to this movie, The Fifth Element. So I feel like Ruby Rhod was like his character in, similar to Rush Hour, actually closer to Friday. The character he played in Friday is like, but amped all the way up. So it's like Chris Tucker turned past 11. Like, you know, there's a dial, it goes to 10, it goes to 11 and emergencies. And then he broke the dial. It's like he tried to go, he took it to 12 and he broke the dial, and it got stuck on past 11. And he was just fantastic as Ruby Rhod. He livens up the movie. He's funny. He's crazy. So another one of my favorite things about this movie. So the action sequences were great. I love especially the fight between Lilo and the aliens. And then there's it's like the whole set piece where they're fighting on the Fhloston Paradise, the cruise that they was fighting on. And so Lilo is fighting the aliens and is interspersed with the opera singer singing. And that was extremely well done. And then how the wider action broke out where you had Corbin Dallas. Now he's fighting the aliens in the opera house, and all that was just fantastic. It was great. It was great. It's like no notes. I especially like during when the action sequence is taking place, it's like that everybody's looking for the stone. So there's a running gag where every time Zorg is delivered a crate where he believes the stone to be. The stones aren't in the crate. So that gag kind of runs through the entire movie until they find the stones. The stones are the 4 elements. Leela is the 5th element. So they need obviously all 5 elements to stop the evil. Zorg is working for the evil to try to recover the stones so the stones can't be used against the evil. Somehow the evil is like a giant ball of fire. It's probably a little bit smaller than the moon. And it is like making a beeline to the earth. It comes every 5,000 years. And apparently I think that's what they're saying, that the thing comes every 5,000 years. And I don't know what it did the previous years. Like I don't, if it visited Earth like 5,000 years previous, what did it do then? I'm not exactly sure. But this time it's coming to destroy apparently all life on Earth. And only Lilo can stop it. Lilo and the other 4 elements. Lilo is not like a born human. She is a constructed human. She was genetically engineered to be the most perfect being. And together with the other 4 elements, or together the groups, they form a powerful weapon that can destroy the evil, the great evil that's coming to the earth. So the stones represent the 4 elements: the earth, wind, fire, and water. And Emmanuel is, like in the beginning of the movie, Emmanuel Zorg is expecting his alien allies to bring him the case. They brought him the case, but the case was empty. And then later on in the film, he goes to Fhloston Paradise because he knows the stones are there, and he finds a case that he thinks are the stones. So he takes the case, he gets on the spaceship, he starts flying away. He sets a bomb on Fhloston Paradise in order to blow up the entire cruise ship, and then he takes off. And he looks in the case that he had grabbed, and it turns out the stones aren't in that case either. So he has to turn around and go back to the cruise ship that he set a bomb on. And the first thing he does is he deactivates the bomb. He's going to go deactivate the bomb so he can go look around and try to figure out where the stones are. But what he does not know is that he would have never found the stones. As it turns out, the stones were hidden in the body of the performer, the opera woman, the opera singer. And somehow the aliens that were the caretakers of the stone, they somehow implanted these stones in her body. And there was probably a surgical procedure that they were supposed to do to remove the stones. But she was shot and she was near death. So when Corbin had went to her and asked where the stones, well, actually, he was trying to help her. She told him that he needed to get the stones and get them out of there. And he's like, where are the stones? And she said, they're inside of me. So he basically went, since she was kind of blown apart anyway, he went into her wound and kind of rummaged around her insides until he found the 4 stones. And then she died. And so that was, but I like that, that it was like the stones fake out. Like the stones, we're thinking that we're picturing the stones being in the case, because in the beginning of the movie, we see the caretaker aliens put the stones in a case and then take the stones off of the earth. So the audience is expecting the stones to be in that case or a similar case. And it turns out it was a fake out. The stones weren't in the case. They were inside this blue alien, apparently during, the entire time that everybody was looking for the stones. So I like that. I really enjoyed that. That was a great way to, it was just a great fake out that you think the stones are in the case and they're inside the alien. That was just, I like that part. And then, opening the stones is, another one of my favorite parts. This is a part where, Chris Tucker as Ruby Rhodes kind of shines, and how they have to figure out, it's kind of messed up that they have to figure out how the stones work, because you'd think the aliens would have told the humans how the stones work. They know that they have to place the stones on a pedestal. And actually, they didn't even really know that much, because there's a room. All they know really definitely is that they have to bring the stones into the room, but they don't know exactly how to place the stones on the pedestal, but they figure it out. And then they know that they have to put Lilo in the middle of the stones. So that's not something they had to figure out, but they couldn't figure out how to activate the stones. And it was activated. One of the stones was activated by accident. And so I kind of loved that, even though it was, I don't know if I want to call it a plot hole, but it's kind of a plot hole, because you have these priests and their main job is to take care of the place that is supposed to be the focus point of the weapon that will destroy the evil. So you would suspect that they knew how to activate the weapon. They should have known how to activate the stones, but for whatever reason, they don't know. It could be that because the information was being passed from priest to apprentice to priest to apprentice for over 300 years. So maybe in that passing down the knowledge, that somehow that the knowledge of how to activate the weapon was corrupted and lost. So that's the only thing that makes sense. So them trying to figure out how to activate the stones were great. And the first stone, when was activated by accident, it's just David just sighing over the stone. Is like, this is never going to work. And then when he does that, the stone opens a little bit, and everybody gets excited and they run over, try to figure out what did he do to open the stone. And he said, well, I stood here, I put my arms out like this, and I said, this is never going to work. And of course, the stone doesn't do anything. And then people are just staring, and then he sighs again. And then when he sighs and lets out that breath, the stone opens a little bit more. And then Corbin, like, he kind of pushes everybody out of the way and started blowing on the stone. And then the stone let out this light, and it was activated. And so they realized that the stones had the elemental symbols on it, so they had to have some portion of that element touch the stone so that the stones would activate. So the earth stone, the priest put sand on the earth stone, and the earth stone opened up. And actually that wasn't the priest. That was, I think that was Corbin. They may have been Corbin. He put sand on the stone. And the priest actually, he wiped the sweat off of his brow and squeezed the water onto his stone, and his stone opened up. He squeezed his sweat on the stone. And then Ruby, he's left with the fire stone, but he doesn't have matches. It's like he has no way of actually making fire. And Corbin is down to his last match. And it's funny, right? Because it's a callback to the beginning of the film, where I guess he's trying to quit smoking, or it's either he's trying to quit smoking, or he has like some kind of cigarette allotment, or because he only has like 4 cigarettes. And they come down, and the cigarettes are funny because they have these massive filters on there, but just a little bit of actual tobacco cigarette at the tip of the filter. So he's only got like 4 of these cigarettes, and it's like maybe he's smoking 1 a day. I think that's how he got a lot of these. He's not explained to the point where I can understand if he was trying to quit smoking or if he just got like a ration of cigarettes. So, and you see his, like in the beginning of the film, he is down to his last 2 matches and he takes one of the match and lights a cigarette. And so he has 1 match. So at the end of the film, he pulls his matchbox out of his pocket and there's 1 match. And so they all have 1 chance for the fire stone to be activated or, that's like the end of the world. And they played it up real nice in the movie, but Corbin places the flame on the stone lights up, it opens, everything's cool. And then the last thing he has to do is to convince Lilo to do her part after the stones have been activated. And then after some cajoling and convincing her that he loved her, and at the very last minute, she lifted up her face to the ceiling and a great light had emitted from her eyes and mouth. It was basically her whole face, just giant, bright, noisy light. And it goes through the ceiling of the structure that they're in. It goes into space and hits the evil globe object. And, the evil object is screaming, and then the object is destroyed. And that was pretty much the movie. I mean, there's a denouement at the end, of course, and there's a funny thing where Corbin and Lilu are in a chamber having sex as they're supposed to be healing, and they get a visit from the president, and the scientists are trying to hide the fact that Lilu and Corbin are having sex in the chamber, and that was awful. And then Corbin's mom calls, and the president answers, trying to congratulate her about Corbin's deed, but she doesn't. She starts complaining to him because during the entire film, that's all she does is complain. So that was a little bit funny. But yeah, this is a fine movie. It's just a fine movie. It's a great piece of entertainment. It's visually appealing, and I just really enjoyed it. And I wonder if you enjoyed it too. What were your favorite parts of the movie? Were there parts that I skipped? I skipped a lot of parts, admittedly. So let me know what you enjoyed about the movie. You can hit me at my email or on the socials. So that's it for the favorite parts. Let's talk about the top 10 trivia. All right, we're back with the trivia top 10. Most of the trivia coming from IMDb, but maybe bits and pieces coming from other sources. So the first bit of trivia, we have the divine language. So throughout most of the film, Lilu is speaking this, what they're calling the divine language. It almost sounds like a language. And I had always wondered if she was just babbling, or is this something that actually had structure? So what I found was that the divine language spoken by Lilu was invented by co-writer and director Luc Besson and further refined by Milla Jovovich, who had little trouble learning and developing it, as she was already fluent in 4 languages. The language had only 400 words, and he and Milla Jovovich had conversations and wrote letters to each other in the language as practice, and by the end of filming, they were able to have full conversations in the language. So it was a real language that they had invented. So, or at least they were speaking words that they understood. So it wasn't merely gobbledygook. She wasn't just babbling incoherently. She was babbling in a way that at least the director could understand her, and she and the director could have conversations. So it's great that they went to the extent of actually creating a language. Luc Besson demanded that most of his action shots in the movie were in broad daylight, as he was reportedly tired of the dark spaceship corridors and dimly lit planets common in science fiction movies, and wanted a brighter, cheerfully crazy look as opposed to a gloomy, realistic one. So that actually made the movie entertaining. And actually, I think the look he was going for was Star Wars, because if you look at most Star Wars movies, most of the action take place in bright daylight. And I guess in subsequent movies, they had gone darker and quote unquote more realistic, but he wanted to keep it light. And, it just helped with the enjoyment of the movie. When composer Eric Serra showed soprano Eva Milla, who dubs the voice of the diva, the sheet music for the diva dance, she reportedly smiled and relayed to him that some of the notes written were not humanly possible to achieve because the human voice cannot change notes that fast. Hence, she performed the notes in isolation, one by one, as opposed to consecutively singing them all together, and they digitized the notes to fit the music. There were a few moments when you can hear the difference in the vocal tones of the diva's voice. It sounds like they took her voice and they put it on piano. At some points, it kind of sounds like auto tunes when the diva is singing. And it made sense they would write music that a human couldn't sing because, it was an alien that was singing it. So that was clever. Luc Besson wrote the original screenplay when he was in high school. He had conceived the story of this movie and invented the world of the movie as a child so he could escape his lonely childhood. He began writing the script when he was 16, though it was not released in theaters until he was 38. Besson made the hero a taxi driver because his own father worked a second job as a taxi driver. The elder Besson did this to support Luc going to art school. Luc has a taxi driver in almost all of his movies to honor his father. Now, I've only seen a few of Besson's movie, and this is the only movie that I noticed a taxi driver in. So, like, a taxi driver probably wouldn't have been in Joan of Arc, for example. At the time, it was the most expensive movie ever produced outside of Hollywood. Most expensive production in Europe. The most expensive production in Gaumont's history, and Gaumont being the studio that financed the project. The visual effects budget of the movie was the highest of its time. So they definitely spent a lot of money. It was a huge gamble, this movie. And thankfully, the gamble paid off. When the president tells Father Vito Cornelius that he has 20 seconds to state his point, Vito talks for exactly 20 seconds. I didn't think to count the seconds as Vito was talking, but that's amazing that they were able to do that. When filming began, the production decided to dye Milla Jovovich's hair from its natural brown color to her character's signature orange color. However, due to the fact that her hair had been re-dyed regularly to maintain that bright color, Milla's hair quickly became too damaged and broken to withstand the dye. Eventually, a wig was created to match the color and style of Lilo's hair and was used for the remainder of the production. Yeah, to me, that hair really did look crazy weird. To the point where it did not look real at all. And it was probably me detecting the fact that it was a wig. Gary Oldman played Zorg as a cross between then president candidate Ross Perot and Bugs Bunny. And I can kind of see that. I am old enough to remember Ross Perot's run for the presidency. He was one of the most popular third-party candidates in history. He was an ultra-wealthy guy that was financing his own campaign for president. And he used to have these half-hour infomercials campaigning for president and that nobody else was doing. So that was he was a real numbers guy. He would go by facts and figures and as to why he was a better candidate. But this is a two-party country, and third candidates just don't win something as big as a presidency. Gary Oldman is such a good friend of Luc Besson that he took the part of Zorg without bothering to read the script, purely as a favor to repay Besson for partly financing his directorial project, Nil by Mouth, in 1997. He did the role while taking an 8-week break from that film. Upon release in 1997, Oldman attended the Cannes Film Festival and did all of the press junkets to help promote the movie out of loyalty to Besson. When Oldman was asked in 2014 interview if he actually liked the movie, Oldman stated, "Oh no, I can't bear it." He had already explained in 2011, "It was me singing for my supper because Luke had come in and partly financed my film." On the movie's cult success, he laughingly commented, "That's a wacky world we live in." And I saw another interview where he talks about how much he can't stand that movie. At last, according to the Ultimate Edition DVD, Prince and Michael Jackson were sources of inspiration for the part of Ruby Rhod, and both were even considered for the role, with Prince being the first choice. He reportedly declined as he found the costumes too outlandish, and Chris Tucker got the part instead. Tucker claimed that the secrecy around the script was so high that not even he knew how the character was supposed to be played, but the outlandish costumes actually helped him get into character. As a result, many of the reactions of other actors to his performance were quite genuine. So yeah, he was outstanding. And he does, like, if you look at his stand-up, he does an amazing Michael Jackson impersonation. So they could get Michael Jackson, so they got the next best thing, a Michael Jackson impersonator. And it's amazing that Prince said that he didn't want to do the movie because he found the costumes so outlandish, considering the costumes that he wears for his concert. It's like he's almost dressed as Ruby Rhod, so I don't get it. I think he would have been great, but Chris Tucker would have been better, and Chris Tucker did the role, so that's how. I mean, because Chris Tucker's a comedian. Like, I don't know how funny Prince is. Like, he's a musical genius, but I don't think he's a comedian. I don't think he could have been as funny as Chris Tucker. So I think they made the right choice going with Chris Tucker. So that's it with trivia. Now let's find out what the critics thought. The critics gave it a 72%. The audience gave it an 81% on Rotten Tomatoes. IMDb Reviews has it at 7.6 out of 10. Les Patch, I think that's how you say their name, from the Herald Sun in Australia wrote, "The brains behind The Fifth Element would have been better off adding a sixth element, common sense, to the plot, and allowing it to form a bridge between the film's fantastic visual appeal and its ramshackle plot." I don't necessarily disagree with this statement. I mean, Luc Besson had started writing this when he was 16 years old. This movie feels like it was written by a child, so I'm not mad at her comment. Tim Brayton from Alternate Ending wrote, "Even 20 years on, The Fifth Element hasn't lost very much of its ability to thoroughly confound and dazzle, and I believe that this is a true statement." Jeff Andrew from Time Out wrote, "Besson's futuristic fable is flawed by a messy narrative which strains to incorporate far too many grotesque and eccentric characters." Now, I don't know if it had too many characters, but it's fair to say that it's a little messy. I'm not going to lie, but I enjoyed it all the same. And we have Joe Layden from The Moving Picture Show who wrote, "A jaw-dropping, mind-blowing pop epic that gives you everything from the slam-bam sci-fi fantasy for Star Wars to the inspired slapstick lunacy of the Marx Brothers." And there is some truth in that statement. I definitely agree. Finally, The Fifth Element is, as this recording, available on Prime Video. One of my favorite sci-fi stories is returning to theaters in a new Stephen King adaptation. On November 14th, 2025, The Running Man, starring Glenn Powell and directed by Eric Wright, would hit theaters. So I thought that now is a great time to talk about the first adaptation of this outlandish concept. The first film starred Arnold Schwarzenegger and directed by Paul Michael Glaser. So join me next time for 1987's The Running Man. You can follow us on Blue Sky, Threads, TikTok, Instagram, and sometimes Twitter. Please contact us with any questions, comments, or suggestions at fanmail@backlookcinema.com. Please rate and review on your favorite podcast app. And if you're listening on YouTube, please like or subscribe or leave a comment below. I love to hear from you. One last time, if you like this show, then please help us grow by spreading the word about Backlook Cinema, the podcast. Believe me, it matters. I've been Zoe Richardson. Be safe, share a movie from yesteryear with your family, hug your loved ones, and if you're going to be anything, be outstanding.